I can remember it like it was yesterday when we first met. I was a sophomore in high school. It was in the spring. And our high school shop, ag shop, was in the basement of the building. So there was a ramp that went out to the side of the building. And I was out there on the ramp working on a ladder that I was making. And she was sitting there watching everybody else play softball. And we just started talking, and I thought, man.
See, if I would have liked to play softball, we probably never would have had that first conversation.
I liked her because she would talk to me. I mean, it just seemed like it was, we just had a conversation. I don't remember what we talked about, but it just was a conversation. Probably made more of an impression on me than it did her, but.
But then you came into the D&D with Ron Ferris or somebody.
No, I came into the D&D and you were with Ron Ferris.
Oh, well, I knew Ron was involved there somehow. Anyway.
There's all these other boys always complicated things.
But I remember looking at him thinking, I wonder what it'd be like to kiss him.
If I'd have known that's what she was thinking, I would have ran out the door. I'll let you explain our first date, dear.
Well, you can if you want to. It always makes you so happy.
We were both in the typing down in the basement in the southwest corner of the high school. Class got out, and I was just walking up the stairs, and here she came, and she asked me, and there was a Sadie Hawkins dance coming up, and she asked me if I would go with her.
And Sadie Hawkins means that the girls are supposed to ask the boys. That's what a Sadie Hawkins dance is.
The deal behind it was that there was some girls in my class that had talked her into asking me because I think they were kind of tired of me asking them out.
They were very encouraging. They said, you two would make a good couple. He's such a nice boy. I said, well, they probably said, he's a nice guy. You should go out with him.
Because we don't want to.
They didn't ever say that to me. That's your take on it.
I might have been warned ahead of time that she was going to ask me because I could remember sitting watching her over there, and she looked kind of nervous.
I never asked a boy out for a date before. So we went to the Sadie Hawkins dance.
And I had a lot of fun. So I thought, well, I'll ask her out on a date. Oh, sorry, I already had a date with Randy Madison.
But I'm sure you were persistent, because eventually we did go
I don't
out.
even remember the second date because I was so blown down from the second chance there. But
There were breakups.
we dated off and on for 5.5 years. Yeah, we had some experimental sidetracks.
That's one way to put it. When he went to college, then he went out, and so then I went out with some other people. And then when I went down to Lincoln, where he was at it, because he was at the university, I remembered I really wanted to get him back. And then he was not being very nice to me. A lot of tears were shed. Eventually we got back together, and then we were lavaliered. Got a little farmhouse lavalier necklace. And then we got pinned, so there was some kind of a ceremony with that at farmhouse, and got a farmhouse ruby pin. And then we were engaged, and we never broke up after that.
When I graduated from high school, or no, when you graduated from high school, I was working for Roger Hankey, and I was out cultivating. She came out and rode on a tractor with me, and she said, "When are we going to get married?" And I said, "When I get out of college." That about blew it right there.
It's like, that's a long time away. Yeah, I wasn't going to wait that long, and I wasn't going to be a farmer's wife, but.
And I wasn't going to marry a Methodist.
I didn't know that. He was at Fort Leonard Wood for Army boot camp. Or was it ROTC? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Between my junior and senior year.
And I was living in an apartment with a couple other girls in Lincoln. And we had talked about getting married for a long time, so it wasn't any big surprise. I think maybe I even picked out my ring and So it wasn't a big surprise. But he came home on leave with his hair all shaved from boot camp. And I don't remember, you didn't kneel. I think you just kind of said, "Here's your ring." And I don't think he ever said, "Will you marry me?" I think it was just understood.
She never gave me a chance. I just had the ring mailed to me, and then I just gave it to her when I came back. I don't remember what exactly was said. You opened the door, and I gave you the ring, and
well, we were sitting on the couch when you gave me the ring.
Oh, we were?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I remember that. We were sitting on the couch. So what the question was, where and when we got married in the Methodist Church in Central City, June 12th, 1966. He graduated from college.
Turned 21.
On June.
May. Or turned 21 in April. Graduated in May and got married in June. So we met all the guidelines.
Yeah. It was a lot different than what they do now. I mean, now there's a big dance. There's always a big shindig. And we got married at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And
on a Sunday.
On a Sunday. We had cake and nuts and mints. We were I've always thought we were the first couple to get married in that new church, but actually we were the second couple because Cheryl Brown was the first. But the sanctuary wasn't built yet. And so the wedding was in the fellowship hall. So everything was set up for the wedding. And then after the wedding, everybody walked out and could, at that time you didn't open your own wedding gifts. So we had some friends, girlfriends I suppose, that opened the wedding gifts. They were all on display back in one of the back rooms. So then everybody went kind of through the receiving line on and looked at the gifts, came back around, and by that time the reception was set up with the cake. And
Farmhouse Brothers serenaded us.
They did, sang a nice song. And we didn't have our pictures taken before the wedding, they were all taken after the wedding. And I remember the photographer was posing our hands for the picture with the rings, and one of the ladies that I work with came over and threw a bunch of rice because she was going to leave. So there we were with rice all over us for this picture. The photographer was not very happy about that.
It was hot.
It was hot. Yeah, it was hot.
Sweat was dripping off my nose.
And then I had a different outfit for my going away outfit, so I changed into that. And he was worried about his fraternity brothers messing with the car, so he had left the car at his sister's because they were already married. They had a garage, so he left his car with them, and then they decorated it all up. But it was okay. Well, we went to Colorado, and so I think we stayed the first night in Kearney at a motel there, and then we drove to just outside of the mountain area. The second night, stayed at a Ramada Inn, I remember, and then we drove a little bit into the mountains, and then your father said, "Well, if you've seen one mountain, you've probably seen them all. Let's go home." So we turned around and went home. And so then when we got back, we stayed one night in his old bedroom at his grandmother's down in the basement again. And then the next day we went back to Lincoln, and we had been chivaried, and so the toilet seat was greased and all the labels were off the cans, and the bed was messed. I don't remember what they did to the bed. Anyway, it took us a while to get everything back in order. So.
It's a little different than the honeymoons now.
Yeah.
Didn't spend near as much money though either.
But when we got in all fairness, when we got back to Lincoln, we didn't tell anybody we were back, so we still had some alone time for those first few days.
Well, my best man, he and some friends had rented a house in Lincoln, and they wanted us to live in it over the summer so they could keep the house. Well, we thought that meant that they would pay the rent if we just stay there and and keep it for him. Well, it turned out that wasn't the case. But anyway, we ended up paying the rent. But we stayed there till school started, and then we moved on to a small 2-room apartment.
Very small apartment.
Yeah. We were there until we went to the service center, right?
And he brought home a cat. And I've never had a cat before, so that was kind of weird.
Cy the Siamese. We were married in June of '66, and I went in to the service March 1st of '70.
No.
No, that's not right.
That's not right.
67.
Yes.
I got out in
Yeah.
March of '70.
Yeah. Yeah, but you didn't go right to Vietnam.
Well, no, we
Yeah.
went through that. Went to service, yeah.
He went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for training, and that was on tanks, armor training. And we were there, I don't know, 3 or 4 months maybe. And then we went to Fort Stewart, where he got his flight training. And we were there several months. And then we went to Fort Rucker
Bird dog training.
for bird dog training. Okay.
I went to Vietnam. She went home.
Well, we started by writing letters, and then somewhere along the line, the government paid to mail tapes back and forth, but they were like reel-to-reel tapes. And we probably talked to each other every day, one way or another. Letters, you never knew how long they were going to take. You know, sometimes they'd get there in a short time. Well, the tapes too. Sometimes I'd get one tape, and then a couple days later I'd get a tape that he had made, 2 or 3 days before that. But we thought that was great that we could hear each other's voice,
Did we ever talk on the
I
telephone?
don't think we ever talked on the phone.
It was possible, but not. It took a lot of work to talk on the telephone back home.
I worked at the bank while he was gone as a teller, and I'll never forget one day 2 officers came into the bank, and my my heart just fell. And of course, I listen to the news all the time to see where most of the fighting was and how many soldiers died, and yeah, it was disconcerting.
Probably harder on her than it was me because I was busy. And then she had a really bad winter when I was gone.
Had so much snow. Every morning I had to go out and clean the snow off the car and try to get it backed out of the driveway. It wasn't in a garage. We didn't have a garage. I lived in a little trailer house.
Had a couple fender benders while I was gone.
A couple fender benders.